Good morning all. On behalf of the board of the Community Foundation for Ireland, I would like to thank you all for joining us here this morning. We are delighted to be able to bring you this series of philanthropy masterclasses virtually, and we hope you enjoy them and take away some pointers from our fantastic lineup of speakers. Most of you know and work with the Community Foundation for Ireland, and we hope you find this series useful on your philanthropic journey. Most donors, including myself, have their own causes they want to support. However, it is important to step back from time to time and reflect on how our donations are making a difference, and if there are lessons that can be learned from other donors and experts in the field of philanthropy. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, we hope this masterclass series gives you some inspiration and guidance on how to start or inform your charitable giving. The Community Foundation for Ireland provides a space for donors to learn about effective and strategic giving and guides new and long-term donors on how they can make a real difference with their giving. As you will hear from our speakers today, philanthropy is not just about giving to charity. It is a powerful tool for social change. In today's session, which will finish by 12:30, you will hear from three speakers along with the Community Foundation for Ireland's new CEO, Denise Charlton. First to speak is Peter Barrett, CEO of SMBC Aviation Capital. Peter was appointed Chief Executive Officer in 2004. He has been active in the aircraft leasing and finance sector for over 30 years. Our second speaker is Margot Slattery. Margot joined SODEXO Ireland in the early 1990s and prior to her current role was Country President of SODEXO Ireland from 2015 to 2019. For her work in championing successful inclusive leadership in Ireland, Margot was regularly listed on the Financial Times Top 100 LGBT business leaders and was made a Chevalier de l'Ordre National du Mérite by the French ambassador to Ireland. She has also been the recipient of many other business and professional awards in Ireland and abroad. Our third speaker is Liam Ryan. He joined SAP in 1999 as manager for the remote service delivery team in active global support. He was appointed managing director of the Service and Support Centre in Ireland the following year and has since overseen the growth of SAP's operations in Ireland. Today, that equates to more than 2,300 employees in Dublin and Galway, covering research and development, services and commercial sales. Liam is also the chair of the EMEA CSR Governance Committee. Finally, you will hear from our new CEO, Denise Charlton, a human rights, equality and social justice campaigner. She was appointed CEO in July 2020. Her commitment to equality has seen Denise successfully take leadership roles in campaigns on marriage equality, children's rights and immigration reform, to name but a few. Previously serving as CEO of both the Immigrant Council of Ireland and Women's Aid, Denise has a deep understanding of the sector and the positive impact that strategic giving can have on individuals, families, and entire communities. As a consultant and non-executive director of a number of philanthropic entities, she is committed to policies which nurture the importance of philanthropy in delivering equality, sustainability, and fairness for all. We will now show you a short video on the impact of corporate philanthropy. Last year, SMBC Aviation Capital provided a grant to Belvedere Youth Club to refurbish their premises and to establish Ireland's first hub for restorative practice.
We decided that we would focus on this idea of restorative practice, and we would look at how do we not just introduce this further into the way that we work with our young people, but how do we build it into the way that we work with each other? How do we build it into the day-to-day practices of staff meetings, of board of management meetings? How do we make sure that from the top to the bottom that we're bringing a restorative approach into the DNA of the organisation? And as we would become a restorative organisation, the aim would be, how do we model that and bring that within the community of the North Inner City? How do we work more closely with parents, with the families, with schools, with other youth organisations, community organisations? How do we start to model the way in which we would be learning about how to become a restorative organisation? It's really a unique opportunity. It's allowing us to be innovative. It's allowing us to be creative. It's allowing us to build on the strengths of our community and our young people in a way that you wouldn't be able to do with another piece of funding. It's a truly one-off opportunity, and I think as we embed these new practices within our organisation, and as we lead out from that within the community, I think we will see really significant outcomes in terms of the lives of our young people, and how they can build relationships within their own worlds. The key element of how corporate support and local communities can find that specific sweet spot where things can affect change in the community and in the areas that they work on, is about how they can build relationships with each other, how they can increase understanding of the particular context in which the young people, in our case, or community members, the context and the lives that they are dealing with. By building that understanding, and by building new conversations, by allowing for increased awareness, we can start to see that how these systems may be broken and how those relationships, they can actually shine lights into where there are elements of our communities that have been left behind. And by a corporate and corporate bodies and corporate organisations who are living side by side with these communities. They may not overlap in terms of socially or in any other way, but they are neighbours, and by building relationships there, they can actually make change.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's Peter Barrett here. Hazel, I think my video is stopped from sharing, so if you can switch that on, please. Okay, good morning, everybody. And first of all, let me start by thanking Catherine, Denise, Jackie, and indeed everybody at Community Foundation Ireland for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I'd like to tell you a little bit at the beginning, just a little bit about our industry and our business, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about our CSR journey and some of the lessons that we've learned along the way. I started my career in aircraft leasing about 30 years ago. At the time, the industry was very much in its infancy. It was born out of Guinness Beat Aviation, which was started in the 1970s by the late Tony Ryan. And in intervening time, the industry has very much flourished in Ireland, and we're now recognised as a global centre for excellence for aircraft leasing. Most of the top aircraft leasing companies in the world are headquartered here, and the industry now supports about 5,000 jobs and contributes about 600 million annually to the Irish economy. Irish lessors manage over 5,000 commercial jet aircraft. That represents about $130 billion of assets. Our business, SMBC Aviation Capital, was founded in 2001. It's owned by two of the largest and most successful companies in Japan, the Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group and Sumitomo Corporation. And our business has a fleet of about 500 aircraft. And to put that into context, in normal circumstances, one of our aircraft would take off or land somewhere in the world about every minute. But of course, these are not normal circumstances. And that might actually ask you to, why is a company in the aviation industry at this particular point in time talking about the importance of philanthropy? No doubt, aviation has been one of the sectors worst hit by the current crisis. But one thing I have learned in my 30-year career is that it's a cyclical industry. I've seen things like the Gulf Wars, SARS, 9/11, the global financial crisis. And each time, despite the challenges, our industry has recovered. And while this is a very challenging time at the moment, history does tell me that we will recover and this sector will thrive and flourish again. So our business and indeed our shareholders take a very long-term view on our investments in the aviation space. And that's also the approach we're taking on our philanthropy and the efforts we're making there. I think it's important to say at the outset that we're a business-to-business company. So we don't have a consumer brand to promote. We don't either have or indeed seek a significant public presence. I mean, we engage in corporate and social responsibility because we believe it's the right thing to do. I'm very aware that I've been very fortunate to work in the global business I work in, and my personal journey in philanthropy and in CSR is very much born from that realization. I often say to people that the opportunities that I have really come from circumstance. Being born into a nurturing environment, education, and all those things that has given to me, and that's really a key part of what's got me to where I am today. And I also recognize, however, that most of the people throughout the world don't have that opportunity. Normally, while I'm speaking to you from home today, like most of us, I've been working from home for the last few months. But in normal circumstances, I'd be sitting in our very comfortable modern offices in the IFSC, running a prosperous global business. But I don't have to look very far to see the other side of the track, so to speak. It doesn't escape my attention when I look outside my office window to the boardwalk along the Liffey, that there's lots of people from lots of different parts of society that are impacted by the social deprivation of the modern times. In fact, I can walk from our offices to Belvedere Youth Club in it's about 500 meters from where I'm based, and in that I can walk through some of the most socially and economically disadvantaged areas in Ireland. And I really think it's up to all of us to do something to try and change that. We're fortunate in our business in that our shareholders share the same values as we do. And they're very committed to giving back to their communities right throughout the world. And they've generously supported our activities to the tune of about €1.5 million since over the last few years. So our CSR journey started in 2014, and we took our first step into CSR. I'd very much encourage any company or individual embarking on this journey to do just that, to take the first step, to make a start. A lot can be achieved once you get going. So we set up a CSR committee that's very well established now, that's made up of volunteers from our Dublin and global offices. And it's that team that built the foundation for our strategy and built out what we're doing today. We decided very early on that we could not be all things to all men. There's many deserving projects and causes, but you really have to narrow our focus and focus on particular areas. And we focused on education and children. Also at the heart of our CSR activity is a really important belief that our efforts are about long-term and lasting contributions, and that they have to make a real and tangible impact. So, for example, one of the first projects we funded was the building of an end-of-life suite at the Laura Lynn Children's Hospital in Stillorgan. Now, this suite has made a real difference over the last number of years to children and their families going through what is the most difficult part of their lives. But interestingly, subsequently, Laura Lynn asked us to support an upgrade of all of its IT systems. And this was an important lesson for us. It's not just the obvious projects, but also the more prosaic things like IT that are really important to support. Another good example is that over the last 4 years, excuse me, we've been working with Open Arms Malawi. This is a charity that cares for vulnerable and orphaned children in Malawi, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. And an important aspect of this project is that since 2016, each year we send 10 of our employees, 10 of our colleagues, go to Malawi to assist in the construction of new projects, feeding stations, nursery homes, and the like. And I can't understate the impact that this has had on our staff. I mean, every year this group comes back. It's 10 different people every year, and they come back, and you can see the real impact it's had on them, and their energy and enthusiasm to be even more involved in our CSR activities. So funding is important, but staff involvement is critical. The common theme running through all of our projects is the level of staff engagement. Our strategy and its implementation and the selection of the partners is all led by our staff. We take a very structured approach to volunteering, which allows people both at the time, but also gives them the responsibility to make their own positive impact. So we're not just giving money, but we're cultivating long-term relationships between our colleagues and the people we work with. And for example, this year, our 200 or so staff gave almost 3,000 hours of their time to support the projects that we're involved in. In 2019, we felt that there was, we had a number of projects on the go, but we also felt at that point we wanted to create a flagship, a legacy, a transformational project. And that's where our relationship with CFI was started. In 2017, the Mullarkey report on the Northeast Inner City was being published, and its conclusions resonated with myself and many of my colleagues, really making it clear that we need to do something in our local community. As I've mentioned, I worked in the IFSC for the best part of 25 years now, and it's really never ceased to hit me that the dichotomy of the wealth, the prosperity and affluence of the financial services centre that sits literally side by side by some of the poorest and most socially disadvantaged areas in Ireland. The expertise that CFI brought to this project really was invaluable. And I'm not just saying that because Catherine and Denise and Jackie are on the line, but really it made a huge difference. I mean, we are experts in aircraft leasing, but we're not experts in philanthropy. And CFI brought a knowledge, an expertise and approach to the project that we would not have been able to do ourselves. Jackie and the team took their time to understand us, understand our priorities, and to make a clear recommendation on an approach that would be a good fit for us. So with their assistance, we based our selection of the project on 5 core criteria: proximity, the impact on the local community, the lasting legacy it would have, it had to be sustainable past our involvement, and it had to have scope for our employees to be actively involved. And we invited applications from the local charitable organisations, and after a very diligent process, working with CFI, we selected Belbury Youth Club, or BYC. So as Paul has said, BYC provides comprehensive youth services to disadvantaged children and teens in the Northeast Inner City. Their services include homework facilities, recreational spaces for sport, art, drama. They provide hot meals, for example, for up to 90 children and young teenagers every day. So we're providing them with €760,000 over a 3-year period, and that will involve the creation of Ireland's first hub for restorative practice, and Paul explained that well, and also refurbishment of their premises. And we think that our partnership with BYC has enabled them to develop a longer-term vision for the services that they can provide to the kids of the Northeast Inner City. And again, funding is only half of this picture. We're supporting a committed and dedicated staff like Paul, who you saw today, and also Jenny, Paul, and Jonathan. I'm not quite sure if they're on the seminar today, but all of the staff at BYC, the volunteers, the board, they're all dedicating their time to help those kids in the North Inner City. And they're the real givers, and it's great that we're able to support and help them in that. This month, actually, we'll support our first anniversary of working with BIC. And typically, as a company, we've never sought to publicize our CSR activities, and we consciously prefer to keep them below the radar. But one of the things that the partnership with CFI has taught us is the need to share our experience with others on how corporate giving can make a real difference. And actually, that's probably the principal reason I'm sitting here today giving this presentation. And the numbers really are staggering. Ireland remains way behind in terms of corporate philanthropy. I think Irish Charities recently reported that less than 5% of their incomes come from corporate giving, and that's certainly something we can improve. I think corporate and social responsibility is also not just about charitable giving, which is really important, but also how to be a good corporate citizen and be conscious of your impact on wider society. That includes addressing things like inequality in the workplace and also taking a proactive role in sustainability. For example, by reducing the impact that aviation has on the environment. Today, I think aviation is responsible for a little over 2% of global carbon emissions. We in SMBC Aviation Capital have always been conscious of our environmental impact. And in fact, it formed part of our strategy since we started the business when we made the choice to own only the youngest, most fuel-efficient aircraft. And by doing this, we ensure that our fleet and our customers' fleets have the lowest impact on the environment. But we also recognize that this alone is not enough, so we set up a working group that is focused on developing our sustainability strategy. And as a result of this, we've undertaken a carbon audit, And we've now partnered with and are providing funding to VITA, an Irish NGO which fights hunger and climate change in Africa, and helps us to offset our current operational carbon footprint. Aviation generally is not a strong performer when it comes to diversity and inclusion. For example, only in recent years have we begun to see more women at the helm of airlines, or indeed in the cockpit of aircraft. And we know that as a company, we also can help to make incremental change in this area. In viewing our own statistics, there is good diversity in our organization. However, we can and do need to do more just to make it a better business and indeed a better industry. And this has led us to establish Mosaic, which is our equality, diversity and inclusion program. And we'll continue to develop this program and embrace the challenges that lie ahead in creating a workplace that is representative of the society we live in. I'd like to finish up this morning by talking briefly about the importance of philanthropy at the current time, in times like these. At the outset of the pandemic, we recognized that there would be a real and immediate need facing some of our partners. And indeed, it affects not just many of the charities we work with, but it's also having a very real and tangible impact on the arts. 3 years ago, we began a partnership with the National Gallery of Ireland and became its first corporate partner after they reopened following their extensive refurbishment. And it's a partnership that we've developed and strengthened since. Our original commitment comes to an end this month. We've made a decision to extend this despite the current crisis. And to be honest with you, that was, given the current environment, that was not an easy decision. I suppose in times like this, it's things like CSR and support for the arts can be very often be the first things to go. But in fact, these are probably the times when the support is most needed. So we've worked with the gallery over the last few months, researching the impact that art and access to the visual arts has on young people. And a new program we developed with them has the dual ambition of supporting the arts, but also will be centered around education and access to art within disadvantaged schools. Again, this ties into our existing child-centered education projects. We also recognize the effect that COVID is having on communities around the world, the communities that our people, our customers, and our suppliers are based in. We know that our people are best placed to understand the impact that it's having on the ground. So we put in place a COVID response fund where our CSR funds will provide €3 for every €1 raised by staff to support charities that they selected in their own communities around the world. And this has been a very successful initiative. And again, staff involvement has been critical. As I mentioned at the outset, we wouldn't be having this conversation today without the support of our shareholders, and I'm delighted to say they've committed to support and continue the same budget for our CSR activities in the coming year, despite the impact the pandemic is having on our business and our industry. And they understand, as we do, that philanthropy must be sustained and must be long-term. It's about staying committed despite the headwinds. In summary, some of the key lessons as a business that we've learned in our philanthropy journey is get started. You'll learn a lot and achieve a lot by just getting on with it. You've got to be committed to and play a long game. It'll have more impact on your partners and on the business in the long term. You have to have clear focus on priorities. You can't be all things to all causes. Staff engagement and volunteering is critical, and viewing each initiative at the outset through this lens is really important. Having a resource internally, such as a CSR committee, to manage the relationships so that you're building a long-term collaborative partnerships that are a good fit for your organization and your business. And also, you have to address your organization's wider impact in society in areas like the environment and equality. I suppose that good behavior has to start at home, so to speak. And finally, for us, it was all about asking for help when we needed it. It was by working with experts like CFI that made our objectives of a long-lasting transformational project like BYC into reality. So thanks for your time and attention. I'm happy to take any questions later on in the presentation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Sorry, I was just struggling getting my video on there. Really, really nice to be with you today. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak a little bit about SODEXO and what we do in this space, and especially around COVID-19. Just a little bit about a background, I think, like Peter, a bit of understanding of our organization. SODEXO, which was founded in 1966 by an entrepreneur called Pierre Bellon, is now one of the world's largest support services companies. Really, I suppose in reality, what that means is we provide facility services, and we may be in any of your companies or places that you may see us doing a lot of the services behind the line, probably somewhere in the region of about 100, 150 different services. And we've been a company that has grown literally since 1966. Some of the thoughts sort of Pierre Bellon had when he started our company was that he had emerged in Europe after the Second World War. His family had a chandlery business in Marseille. And as a young man, he wanted to do something to create his own business, to create a business for growth and for opportunities for people. He had seen the ashes of Europe and the destruction that had been wrought, and he wanted to be a force for good. And that's very much in the DNA of the organization. And as I sort of talk through what some of the things we've done, you'll understand that. And thankfully, Pierre Bellon is still with us today, and his daughter, Sophie Bellon, is the chair of our organization. And the Bellon family still maintain a large interest in SODEXO, which gives us a great opportunity because we were before COVID a 21 billion organization. We're probably, I think we have figures released today, and it's about 19 billion. And when you go through such massive change as we have over the last couple of months, it's really great to have the backing and support of a family who believe in the organization. We can have a vision that goes not short term, long term, and that helps us around how we manage our giving as well and our philanthropy. And that philanthropy, as I said, is in the DNA of the organization, as is sustainability and diversity and inclusion, because they were things we started on very early days. The organization grew quickly from 1966, and it was decided in the early days to create a charitable foundation, and that is called Stop Hunger. And it sits as part of what we call our Better Tomorrow plan, which is our global corporate responsibility strategy that guides our actions as a responsible business. And one of the 9 commitments, and we have 9 different commitments, is tackling hunger and malnutrition. And the foundation is the, if you like, the way in which we channel that progress made against those commitments. And it has helped us to make great progress over the last couple of years. I've had the opportunity when I've traveled over the last many years to be in SODEXO business across the world and to go and see what we've done in local communities. So I was in India last year and out, in various parts of the countryside in India and seeing the actual impact of many of these projects, and many of them really tied in with our sustainability goals and our diversity and inclusion goals as well. So we did a lot of those around young women, getting them back into education, and again, doing lifelong working for women in our business, promoting and building pipelines. This is some of the actions in India, and they're very, very powerful. And we certainly believe in gender empowerment as a way of making for change. I guess under the Better Tomorrow plan, we aim to reach 100 million beneficiaries by 2025. So that's pretty ambitious, as you can see. And within the UK and Ireland, which is our core region, our target is to reach 500,000 beneficiaries each year. So again, chunky enough. The target has been achieved over the last number of years, and the impact is phenomenal, particularly when you see it in our communities and in the regions. And here in Ireland, everything we have is channeled through the Community Foundation. So that's the link here today. My former role prior to a year ago was as the CEO of our business in Ireland and Northern Ireland. And again, over those last 10 years to be involved with so many different charities, to maybe start a relationship, to look at how we might work together. Is it just volunteering? Is it raising funds? How does that impact on the community? And most importantly, what difference that actually makes for our people? Because everything we do is hopefully something that reflects the communities in which our own people, our employees actually live in and work in every day. In Ireland, we employ or certainly did pre-COVID, about 4,000 people. And globally in the world, we used to employ about 470,000 people. But again, COVID has struck us in a very tough ways, and those numbers have gone down. I think the figures are around 420,000 globally now, so you can see the impact of that change. And one of the good things I think about the Stop Hunger Foundation, it gives a lot of clarity to our organization, because one of the biggest challenges around philanthropy is there are so many things you could do, and how do you focus? How do you find that focus? So it helps us tackle hunger and nutrition, because our very foundation, our very roots was around being a food services company. And that's where so many of our employees work. So that gives a real, platform to that. And, our philanthropy and volunteering includes food and education on health, nutrition and well-being. So it might be joining with some, for instance, DESH schools, looking to educate kids. We've done breakfast with St. Vincent de Paul. We've worked with various organizations over the number of years to try to look at how we can benefit people in just their ordinary lives. And for the last number of years, we've also had a big association with Focus Ireland. So our employees doing sleep out, and again, doing a lot of funding and volunteering. So again, very impactful on the ground for people. And we also, we work to donate time. So we give people, everybody gets 3 days that they can use for volunteering, and we give skills and money and support and nutrition. So a little bit like Peter spoke about, many of similar sort of ways of showing up in this space, and looking at how we might mentor and support some of our charities and organizations, and to promote life skills in local communities. And I suppose one of the things probably kind of really reflecting on COVID in 2020, it was really unparalleled. And as you've heard me just say, we've gone from, 470,000 people to possibly 420,000. And even today we've announced big job cuts in our wider global business. So one of the things we looked at when March, when everything I think came to a head, was an employee relief fund. And that was something that was, I suppose, built and collaborated on by our board, by our CEO, Denise Meshwell, and all our senior leadership. So that employee relief fund was funded by our senior managers, our top 200, who get their yearly bonuses, and by the Bellon family as well. There's a figure of some 35+ million that was actually put together, and our foundation contributed to that. And the way the funds were allocated depended on the social impact for our staff. So that's the way we looked at that. Particularly in some parts of the world, like the US, where they had less social coverage by the state. So we allocated our employee relief fund in those kind of areas. And it was very much just targeted at our frontline employees who had lost their jobs, either temporarily or permanently. And the usage of the employee relief fund was managed independently by each country and region, depending on their own regulations and social situation. And a large part of that spend was also on maintaining medical insurance. So again, until you get involved in this and understand, but again, no medical insurance for thousands of people who lost their jobs or were furloughed in the US. So again, we looked at how we might provide that kind of revenue and coverage for our teams. And from April to August, we supported more than 82,000 employees through that employee relief fund. And the group still monitors that. So we're looking at that. There's still a little bit of residue left. We'll look at if we can support that some more. And we look at how that change is being managed. So it's one of the ways that we've manifested this year, brought it to life, and look to continue to do. So I head up diversity and inclusion globally. So I'm looking at projects that we have all over the world. I then talk and chat with my colleagues on our Stop Hunger Foundation, as do many of our exec, and we look to see what of those are in need and what we can particularly fund at a given time and moment. I think the last thing I'd comment on is the employee engagement that this absolutely gives to our teams is just fantastic. It's unparalleled. And like Peter said, I think around his own organization, it continues to be supported by our board, by our chairwoman, by our exec-com, and by all our regions around the world. So this is one area where nobody ever shies away from. It's extremely popular. Our employees are asking every year, hopefully my 3 days are there. I want to go out and do something. And we try to coordinate those projects across the world. So again, enormous, I think, employee satisfaction from those. So thank you for listening to me. More than happy to answer any questions, but I just wanted to give you a feel for what that might be like, and delighted to pick up anything that may come up at the end. I'll hand back to you, Hazel, and I think it's Liam next. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. Thanks very much, Margot, and good morning to everybody. And I'm delighted to give an update on what drives SAP and how we've partnered with CFI to achieve our giving goals. A little bit about myself. I've been working at SAP now for 22 years. That was following roles with Siemens in Germany and also with Motorola in Swords. Maybe a little bit about SAP. We were originally founded as a company back in 1972, and I guess we're known for leadership in enterprise resource planning software, ERP software, and we've evolved to become a market leader in end-to-end enterprise application software, database, analytics, intelligent technologies, and experience management as well. And we help businesses of all sizes and all industries to operate profitably and achieve their purpose. CFI has supported CSR at SAP since 2008, and from the onset, CFI's vision was one that very much resonated very strongly with SAP. CFI believe in an Ireland where everyone should belong, where people are equal and communities thrive. Where everyone has a voice, and most of all, they stand for a fair, caring and vibrant Ireland for now and in the future. And at SAP, we couldn't agree more. Our core purpose is to help the world run better and improve people's lives. And we believe in a future where technology makes you better, where responsible, healthy business and empathy for one another are as important as the bottom line, where our economy, society, and the environment prosper together. And I guess if you look ahead to 2030, I think the world hopes to achieve a prosperous economy, a healthy planet, a just and peaceful society for all. The United Nations, together with the government and private sector, of course, created the 17 goals known as the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, to help achieve the vision. And the SDGs tackle poverty, quality education, climate action, and equality, but to name a few. But sadly, I guess the reality is we won't achieve these goals by the end of the century. And while governments may be responsible for creating the right conditions and the legislation to address them, it's corporations like SAP and our partners such as CFI that are in unique positions to contribute. At SAP, we believe in the power of business to solve issues and trigger schematic change through innovation. Our CSR strategy is tied closely to the business strategy and promise. We innovate to help our customers run at their best. It's in our heritage and it's our commitment. And I guess it's in this context, we mean to help enterprise to realize their vision and accelerate their impact. We carefully select our partners, primarily in the areas of education, workforce readiness, and entrepreneurship. And it really is to co-develop and co-innovate programs to help driving collective global impact. SAP and our partners at CFI, through them we can accelerate, for example, the commitments to the UN SDGs, and specifically goal number 4, which is quality education, goal number 8, decent work and economic growth, and of course we embrace goal number 17, the partnerships for the goals through our collaborative approach. And I'd just like to talk a little bit about what we believe is our shining example, Africa Code Week. Our SAP corporate social responsibility addresses issues of access, adoption, and the application of what we call 21st century skills to ensure everyone can participate in and of course benefit from today's competitive digital world. It's the digital world really that's key here. Distance learning has become the norm, I think, for most students this year. The shift has taught us that digital skills are absolutely essential, but yet fewer than 30% of the people worldwide actually master basic ICT skills, and only 3% of adults in middle-income countries have coding skills. In Africa, due to the digital skills divide, most Africans are not actively working in the digital economy. Africa has more than 700 million youth spread across 54 countries, And its wealth of youthful talent is, I guess, the envy of more developed nations that face aging and in some case declining populations. The investments we make in training our youth today, of course, will pay huge dividends as we steer through the coming years and decades. SAP Africa Code Week was introduced back in 2015 and has now become Africa's largest digital skills initiative. It provides opportunities for African children and youth to learn the 21st century skills for free, and more importantly, teachers to be trained on digital learning curricula and to be taught by SAP employees. That has been a key for us as an organization. I myself have enjoyed many teaching opportunities in Tanzania, in Ghana, Rwanda, and South Africa as well. In 2019 alone, the initiative saw 3.85 million students participate in over 55,000 coding workshops. And in those workshops, almost half of those attending and participating were girls. And 39,000 teachers were mobilized across 37 countries. Our strong partnerships with public, private, and civil society sectors have been driving sustainable impact for over the last 5 years, and the program has really grown from strength to strength in popularity and in reach. In 2020, we all witnessed the world of virtual take effectively center stage, and this has helped reinforce the Africa Code Week mission of empowering youth and enabling the adoption of digital learning into what's most importantly the national schools curricula. When we visit the countries, we always try and arrange for meetings with the departments of education there, and thankfully we've been able to succeed in getting meetings with the departments, and we've been very successful in getting coding and digital skills onto the curriculums in those respective countries. We have to get bigger and better, and thankfully Africa Code Week returns this year and brings with it the introduction of a smartphone app and a fun Pan-African coding competition called the African Code Challenge. With 2/3 of Africa's population expected to have the use of a smartphone by 2025 and 84% of the population accessing a SIM connection, I guess there couldn't be a better time to introduce an app for digital learning. Africa Code Week's mission this year was to facilitate learning and teaching beyond the classroom walls. The new Africa Code Week app now allows students and teachers to access, of course, dedicated resources anytime, anywhere, and all from their Android device. The app also comes in 4 languages, English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic, to help make sure that no child or teacher is left behind. And the African Code Challenge it's a continent-wide competition calling students aged typically 8 to 16 to compete individually or in teams. We're young participants, and they're also known as courageous coders. They're on a mission to imagine the future of education with a scratch game and a 2-minute video explaining why their particular code and their particular project should win. And it's projects like this that help foster a wide range of essential skills, from problem solving and coding all the way to teamwork and communications. And the challenge will see the top 3 winners then from each participating country compete in the Pan-African competition level. So the final African Code results, they'll be announced later this year. We know encouraging pupils to innovate at an early age is a great way to ignite their social change maker mindset. And with Africa's working age population expected to swell by 2/3, reaching 600 million by 2030, the community-oriented and highly creative African youth have a pivotal role to play in building a safer and a better future. And we do this with our partners, and SAP and our partners, UNESCO, IDEA, and Irish Aid. Again, through Africa Code Week, we just continually illustrate how important it is to take advantage of our most precious resource, our youth. And if we harness this resource by really empowering their digital skills, then we can only go from strength to strength in 2020 and beyond. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank CFI for their support in helping us to bring SAP purpose to life through our CSR initiatives. As I mentioned previously, our aspirational goal is to create a significant and sustainable solution and social impact in 3 core areas: building digital skills, accelerating best run NGOs and social enterprises, and of course connecting our employees with purpose. We believe that our network of partners and the ongoing support and through partners we can achieve these goals. I mean, SAP's whole mantra over the last 50 years, our success has been driven through our partner work, our partner landscape, both in our core ERP work and also in our social engagements. And earlier in January this year, we announced an exciting time for SAP CSR as we shifted the focus from our previous strategy to our new European funding model. And the goal of this new process was to help make the right partnerships and program decisions while helping our partners to understand the focus of our CSR engagements. Our head of global corporate social responsibility at SAP, Alexandra van der Plug, she talks about this when she says that every organization has a role to play in creating access for all to quality education and decent, meaningful work. And as such, SAP grant opportunities are allocated to projects and partnerships that are aligned with our mission and our focus areas. And it's through the support of CFI, our projects can foster socio-economic stability and create opportunity for all by aligning and building digital skills and accelerating non-profits and social enterprises as well. Just in closing, after many years, the SAP and the CFI partnership success is built on a solid foundation of trust, of effectiveness, and impact. And we measure this, and we place a huge amount of emphasis on measuring the level of impact that we have in society as well. We approach our corporate social responsibility strategically. It's in order really to ensure that there's a sustainable future for society, our customers, and our company. By focusing our talent, our technology, of course, and capital on education and entrepreneurship, we really strive to enact positive social change through economic growth, job creation, innovation, and the community. And while the SAP CSR team rely on their own strategic guidance and of course the CSR staff and personnel to lead the flagship initiatives that we have, CFI really provides a solid finance management basis that allows these programs to run very, very successfully. And it's done by their insights and their excellent working relationship with the 3,000 plus nonprofit organizations at a national, a regional and a local level throughout Ireland. Their strong commitment to ensuring impeccable standards of governance and transparency that really follows best international practice. It's evident that the SAP CSR together with CFI through what we believe are innovative CSR programs, that we are building some of the world's best examples of how corporations can realize their purpose through shared value, helping the world run better and sustainably improving lives at a massive scale. Thank you very much, and I'm also happy at a later stage to take questions, and I'd now like to hand over to Denise.
Thanks, Liam, and welcome to everybody here this morning. Thanks to Catherine for representing the board and introducing us, and also to Liam, Peter and Margot. We're so grateful to you at Community Foundation for Ireland for your shared experience and time this morning, but also for all the wonderful work that you're doing and that you've articulated and amplified so brilliantly this morning. We know that it is the voices and experience, shared experience, that brings other people to the table. And we know that it is the way to convince people that philanthropy, gift giving and legacy affect social change in the ways that you have all articulated. I want to say a big welcome and hello also to our audience. We're delighted that you're here with us this morning, listening to those contributions which really have highlighted in a really practical way our goal and our mission here at Community Foundation for Ireland, which is equality for all in thriving communities. And all our speakers have alluded to how their partnership with us has such an incredible impact. So we're delighted that you've come to listen. Some of you are working with us and some of you are thinking about it, and delighted that you're here to hear the real positive impact that the partnership we have with some corporates is having. And, you know, you've heard from 3 of our really significant partners this morning, and others will be out there as well. And, you know, very often the support can start, as Peter said, just start. The support can start in, you know, facilitating a small community service. It can be supporting a bigger charity, or it can be rowing behind a bigger national initiative. But at the end of the day, the results that are desired are the same, which is a positive impact, a positive social impact. So we've heard real stories, real testimonies about what the impact and generosity can do. And I suppose in that time and context, I wanted to take just a little look at philanthropy, and some of the speakers have done the same. What is philanthropy and why is it so important? And why is it so important at this really challenging time that we're all find ourselves living in? I think it was Peter who very articulately alluded to the fact that philanthropy hasn't reached its full potential in Ireland by any manner of means. The full resources, we haven't tapped into that, and in fact we haven't seen the full benefits that could be realised. It is changing, and it's changing because of the generosity of the speakers this morning and the work that they do, and also because of other donors. Our approach is that with donors, it allows communities, volunteers and charities to have that longer view, to plan, to strategize. And whilst we are responding to emergencies, and again, we heard examples of that this morning, we are really trying to encourage solutions that can move beyond the firefighting and really strategize for the future, and how we, I suppose, direct ourselves towards those solutions. So unlike any other type of funding, whether that's from the public purse or whether it's smaller donations, philanthropy, as we've heard, is strategic, it's sustainable, and it really is intentionally looking to deliver results in partnership with others. We've heard how it can work across society. For us in the Community Foundation for Ireland, it can be working with partners to combat climate change, providing a lifeline to those who are experiencing domestic violence, looking after the health and well-being of neighbours, friends and families, crucial at this time. For us, it's also about combating social justice and inequality, really having solidarity with those who, for many reasons, society has left behind, isolated or forgotten. And we look in Ireland and we see, although philanthropy is at a low level, we do see the impact that it's having. And Catherine said in her introduction, I have worked for many years in the voluntary community sector, and I've seen firsthand what philanthropy can deliver. It delivered marriage equality for us. It supported us in that incredible progressive change. I've seen it in my work reunite families who are torn apart from war or immigration red tape. I've seen it provide the progression or the protection of rights for children, for the travelling community, for prisoners. And I've watched the Community Foundation for Ireland be cutting edge in that support and making sure that the most vulnerable are to the forefront of philanthropy. So, you know, the need for support is really far reaching. It's huge. And for any of those of you listening who haven't started your journey, we really would be delighted to match your cause or your service or your campaign, which reflects your company's vision. And I'll come back to that just at the end of my contribution. So we have to talk, I suppose, this morning, and others have already, about the current situation facing our country. And I suppose how we've been all responding and how we've tried to respond at the Community Foundation for Ireland in an unprecedented way. It's said, you know, that COVID-19 and its impacts are indiscriminate. And it's true to say that it has been affecting presidents, royalty, prime ministers across the globe. And it's true to say that it is a virus that nobody is safe from. But, you know, for Community Foundation of Ireland and the frontline organisations that we work with, you know, it's very clear that the impacts of the virus do discriminate. And if you're vulnerable, if you're alone, if you have pre-existing underlying condition, all sorts of contexts, COVID-19 is magnifying the challenges that you face many times over. And the team at Community Foundation for Ireland saw the crisis approaching and the worry about the exasperation of inequalities that we're now seeing, and under the leadership of Gina Roche, commenced an immediate response. There was pressing need, obviously, and as we moved towards lockdown, the groups that were providing a lifeline to older people, people with disabilities, services promoting health and well-being, they were really at risk and telling us how swamped and overwhelmed that they were. And so we did an immediate appeal, and our donors were incredible in stepping up. So that allowed us the emergency response, the Meals on Wheels, the Samaritans, supporting organisations getting online, supporting children trying to learn from home, particularly in context of learning disabilities or other disadvantage. So it allowed us to work with organisations in the emergency onslaught, but it also allowed us to think about the longer term, as we've been highlighting this morning. And how, you know, what are we going to do? COVID-19, as we now are kind of knowing and realizing, isn't going anywhere. And there is such a need now more than ever for strategic, sustainable support so that communities can live with the virus and beyond the virus, but with the virus until we get to that stage. Orchida's Comic Relief, I hope that many of you were viewers on the night, and that saw the foundation involved in a really unique partnership. So entertainers, public, our corporate partners and donors and government came together like never before, as far as I'm aware. And the result of this one partnership generated 6 million, which is incredible. Money which we're now in the process of turning into real impact on the ground. We have high volume grants and we have really impactful strategic grants. So the money will be used to provide the hard and the software for organisations, and more lifeline services will have the digital background or backbone that Liam was talking about, actually, that they'll be able to be fit for purpose, that they will be able to ensure that the volunteers and workers and the people that they support can continue to meet and work together in safety. It's often said that in difficult times, it can bring out the best in people. And it's certainly sure to say that 2020 hasn't been the most cheery of years. It's been pretty grim. But I have to say that at Community Foundation for Ireland, we have seen humanity at its best in the way people have responded. At year end, we, boosted by the generosity of donors in response to COVID-19, we expect to be confirming over 15 million, and that's almost double of last year, which was also a very good year. So philanthropy is working. We've heard this morning how the strategic difference that it can make. But we've also heard this morning, and it's absolutely right, that in the Irish context, it is still very underdeveloped. And there's a piece of work for us to do so that we can realise the benefits that we've all outlined. So for us at CFI, it's a reality that every time we go out with a call for grants where we are inviting people to apply for funding, demand always exceeds supply. So even in the example that I just gave of Orchida's Comic Relief, the demand is double, over double what we can give out. And so we're in a fantastic position to help so many. It's still incredibly difficult to be turning away so many organisations that are doing brilliant work, that are really supporting beneficiaries and the people that they work with, the most vulnerable and the most in need of protection. And we're turning away their applications not because they're not good enough. It's just that one was a little bit better. They were pipped at the post. So it's heartbreaking to see organizations struggling so much for finance in this context when they're doing such amazing work. And so we could be doing something about that. We could be growing philanthropy. And obviously that's what this morning is about. And we're so grateful, as I said, to Liam, to Peter and Margot for sharing their experiences. And I think Peter alluded that they're business to business. They don't need to do that. But for us, it's so important because we need to encourage others to come to the table. Research 2 into 3 by 2 into 3 and Philanthropy Ireland. It was launched this week, and it identified that actually foundations, larger gifts and legacies account for 1% of donations. So all that generosity, only 1%. And if you look at a comparison with New Zealand, it's a third. So, you know, it just demonstrates how far we could go. And the same research reaffirmed what many of you know, that legacies and philanthropy offer the most effective and cost-effective way of charities raising money. So just highlighting what can be achieved. So how do people play their part? How do those listening, play their part? Again, I think an invitation was given. Just start and just get going. But let me talk a little bit about how we work with people, and you've heard how those corporate relationships are really transforming lives. So we're really proud of the work that we do with donors. And again, our speakers this morning have, I suppose, highlighted how committed we are to those relationships. We really try intentionally grow and nurture those relationships. The expert team is there to offer advice, support, updates, so that donors know that their time and their money is having an impact. We provide a flexible and cost-effective way to manage charitable funds. And as I say, it also provides access to expertise in grant making, governance, as Liam mentioned, and also that wide knowledge and connectivity of community needs. So a fund can be set up in your name, it can be done anonymously, there's lots of ways of doing it. And then we can work with you to identify the areas that you want to support. And as stated many times, that the causes are very far reaching and the demand is very high. Once you decide to do that, you can hand over all the administrative work to us if that's your intention, or we work in partnership. And our job then is to promote the fund, to develop the criteria, to receive, vet and assess applications, and then the issuing of grants fall to the team, ensuring due diligence and good governance. We provide regular supports and impact, and again, many of the speakers talked about the importance of impact. And then obviously available to you to link in at the foundation at any time. Our approach is an adaptable one, so you ultimately decide the pace of the grants, whether you want to offer short-term funding or whether you want to invest in one of our endowed funds and work collaboratively, as Catherine mentioned at the beginning. I'll just mention two other aspects of corporate giving which we facilitate and people may be interested in. The first, I suppose, is the company develop bespoke grant making programs, and there's lots of examples of that. So we identify the vision for the fund, we look at the desired outcomes for the company, the critical success factors, and then from planning to launch, working with grantees, our support is available to you. And we've heard this morning how people tap into that in different ways. And the other opportunity, if companies are interested in becoming an active participant in the local area, and there's the option of the community benefit funds, which people may be aware of, and very often they're a large infrastructural project, like the one that is probably known most actively as the generation of wind power. So again, we would bring an independent third-party perspective to such funding, and we offer professional, efficient and a flexible service that avoids the need to set up a separate charitable trust. Many of you will know, and she's been mentioned many times, our Director of Philanthropy, Jackie Harrison, who's an expert in all of these areas, and she and her team would be delighted to have a conversation or to continue the conversation with yourselves. So in conclusion, I realise I'm giving a lot of information about Community Foundation for Ireland and what we do and our aspirations in a very short period of time. So I'm just going to conclude with the main points. Corporate donations through philanthropy are supporting communities across Ireland every day. And our work is to work in partnership to support the most vulnerable. With the Community Foundation for Ireland, donors can tailor their support to ensure maximum strategic and sustainable impact, matching their interests and their vision. Funding can be tailored depending on your company's philosophy and vision. We work together to combat domestic violence, supporting young people, protecting them from harm, combating climate change, or supporting communities who will be impacted by Brexit. There is a whole range of needs. And again, we link in with your interests and your vision. Your actions will increase awareness and will encourage others to build, helping us support a culture and an understanding of philanthropy in Ireland. It serves when corporates are involved in philanthropy to alert policymakers, and we hope to encourage them to respond by bringing in measures that will spark and nurture and grow more gift giving. So at the outset, what I said, what brings us together is the shared vision, equality for all in thriving communities. And the participation today tells us that you share that vision. Our team are ready to engage at the moment that it's right for your company, or continue the engagement that we have with you already. So thank you very much for listening to me also. And we're now going to turn back to our brilliant panel, and we're going to have some time for questions and answers. Hi, Margot, welcome back.
Hi. It was great, Denise. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So just waiting until Hazel gets us all back. And just to encourage anybody that wants to ask a question to put them in the chat. So thanks, everybody, for your fantastic contributions. We have about 15 minutes for questions, and I'll start with a couple. Corporate giving is very low. It's 4.6% about. Peter, you gave the invitation, just start. Why do you think corporate giving is low? And can you unpack or give a little bit more of that encouragement? If somebody's out there listening, how do they just start?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first question is a very difficult one, and you're probably better positioned to answer, Denise. But I think there's a large element of culture in it. I think. I think as a society we shouldn't be too hard to us, because I think at an individual level, Ireland generally has a very strong culture of giving and of charitable support. But people don't tend to see the corporate as a corporate citizen. They just tend to see it as a kind of an isolated thing. I do think that's changing, and I think the events of the last, in lots of different dimensions, you see it around the world. You see it in Black Lives Matter. You see it around the environment. You see that corporates are beginning to see themselves more as a corporate citizen, and beginning to respond to that. I think that's because of pressure in society as things have changed. I mean, interestingly, I think one of the things that is certainly changing it is that we have a very active graduate recruitment program we've had for the last 5 or 6 years. And the voice of that, I'm not an expert on it, but the millennial or the X generation, whatever they call it these days, is definitely a louder voice and a voice for change. And that's something that's influenced our thinking. I think the second part of your question, I mean, how do we do that? I mean, I think we just need to talk about it more, and we need to be more articulate and have things like this. And I suppose there's an element of calling people out, I suppose, a little bit, for want of a better phrase. I think that's really important.
Great, thanks, Peter. Margot, in terms of, Peter there was talking about the global citizen, but actually there have been huge examples, haven't there, around thought leadership. And as he was saying, they're calling people out. And if you think about Black Lives Matters, where particular organizations really were involved into the forefront of thought leadership, you have been for years in terms of diversity and inclusion. And so again, CEOs that are listening out there, will you talk to them a bit about that in terms of philanthropy?
Yeah, thanks, Denise. I think it's a very interesting one, because for years I think that maybe activists and people who have a genuine interest, and the few corporates who were probably in this space, were trying to accelerate this and to get more people sort of joined up. And now the reality is that with some of the things that have happened in the world, and particularly Black Lives Matter, a lot of people have jumped onto this space and become involved. Now that's really wonderful. The biggest challenge that I would say is about the sustainability of that. And, you know, let's be honest, you know, all of our employees, people who work in our organizations, I can certainly tell you for our 420,000, they're mindful, they're watching, they see, you know, are you doing what you say you were doing? Does this really manifest itself? It's very easy to say, well, we're going to do this, or we're going to donate this amount of money. But, you know, a year down the line, when you look at the figures, did you donate it? Did you actually bring any change in the organization? Or did you just throw money at it, which is great? You know, we're not knocking the financial donation, of course, but did you actually make for change? And is your philanthropy really tangible? So can it be felt in the organization, and has it accelerated, you know, some of the changes you want? So if we talk about ethnicity, race, you know, has it changed the visual look of the people who are in leadership? Have we sort of taken the pipeline and brought people up? Have we mentored and supported? And it's the same around anything else that we do. So in my organization, we've kind of 5 key areas: gender, sexual orientation, disability, generations, and ethnicity, race, and culture and origins. And each of those has a measure. So we do, you know, philanthropy as part of, as I said, the foundation, and then all these other measures are part and parcel of a lot of the things we pledge to say we do. And so probably in finale, I would say everything you do has to have, just like business has a KPI, it's got to have a focus, and it's got to be measurable, because otherwise it's very loose, and you know, it doesn't always measure up at the end. So sorry if I kind of went out.
No,
but
that's
I'm
great. Thanks, Margot. No, very helpful. Liam, you talked about the relationship you have with CFI and the kind of values that underpin that, and then the importance of impact as well. Will you unpack that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the relationship with CFI, again, it's our partner approach. I mean, you know, some of the questions just noticing there, you know, where do you start? How do you get on that journey? And I think really, you know, seeing what's out there and partnering with organizations, I think is going to be really, really important. I mean, in terms of unpacking, you know, in terms of measurement and things like that, it is, I mean, at SAP, we link it to our CSR strategy, we link it to our company strategy. So everything is linked. And you could argue, well, that makes perfect sense. But sometimes it's, you know, you may be thrown off on different directions by different people knocking on your door, or different employees coming in and saying, this is a great project we should be working on, etc. But you really have to try and take it back does it align? Is it aligned with our company strategy? Is it aligned with our CSR strategy? Do we have a CSR strategy? Do we have a giving strategy? Do we have a purpose? And really, you know, I think you might need to ask yourself some fundamental questions as an organization first, and then start to build your strategy around that. And then it will start to take shape. And I think once it starts to take shape, then a lot of the measurables will also fall into place. You don't have to reinvent a wheel on a lot of those. They're already there, and they're possibly looking at you in the face. And it becomes then, I would say, possibly a simple process, but then it becomes very, very easy to communicate. It becomes very easy to communicate to organizations, to partners, and especially to employees. This is what we want to achieve. It revolves around our purpose. It revolves around our company strategy, and this is how we're going to measure it. So I do think it's nearly the start of the basics and work out what exactly do you want to achieve out of this.
Great, thanks, Liam. A couple of questions coming in now. Campaigning and social change takes long-term relationships. How well does this fit in with the corporate world, who may need to see short-term wins? Peter. You're on mute. Sorry, Peter, you just have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it depends on the business, Denise. You know, certainly, I mean, as I said at the outset of my presentation, I mean, we take a very long-term view. I mean, we buy assets that are 25-year useful life. We lease airplanes for 12 years. So, you know, we have a very long-term horizon, and so I think you got to find the right partner with the right approach. You know, obviously there's going to be other businesses, you know, fast-moving goods who are very short-term, very, you know, their time horizon is going to be much shorter, and they will have a more immediate, not a need, but a more immediate kind of focus. So I think I think it's horses for courses. So I think you got to try and find the right partner for the right type of business. So as I said, in our case, things like BYC, like Laura Lynn, things like the Malawi project, they're long projects, and it suits our mindset. And I think finding those is important for the charity in question. But there'll be other charities who think of probably short-term needs, who have an immediate response, who need things to happen immediately, and they might focus on a different sector. So I think it's horses for courses.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Lots of charities are struggling to engage corporates to support sponsor online initiative events. So nearly the opposite of that question, to pivot their CSR and giving to this new digital environment. What is the corporate perspective on this? Liam, any thoughts?
I mean, it is a difficult one, there's no doubt about it, and especially when an organization has already aligned with a particular charity. I mean, ourselves, our employees vote on the fundraising element, our charities of choice every year. So that's separate to the EMEA or the global CSR giving. So, so once we have the charity of choice, which is supported then over 2 years, a lot of our, of course, fundraising and volunteering is geared towards that charity of choice. And this year we have had to engage with our charity of choice from a digital perspective and also from a donation. So I don't think there's a silver bullet to it. I think it is persistence more than anything else, and because we're trying things differently. And I mean, even if charities are struggling a little bit, if you can reach out to particular corporates and try and get an understanding for what is their CSR strategy, possibly even do they have mechanisms, or can they suggest mechanisms by which they can become the charity of choice? I think that would really benefit a lot of the charitable organisations as well.
Thanks, Liam. I'm going to ask you all the same question now, actually. Everybody talked about the vision and the long-term strategic impact of the relationships and the partnerships that you have. If you were talking to a CEO out there who's thinking about embarking in the journey, how did you start to think about the vision? How did you start to unpack the vision? Everybody will be different. Margot.
I'll just kick off. I think it's incredibly important to make sure that the vision, first of all, that there's alignment in the strategy with what your organization is doing, or something around the purpose, etc. That's certainly our viewpoint. And from my experience, that's been a good way to think about it, because when I was in a CEO role and we were doing our work with our charities, and when I was trying, and it kind of ties in with something like Liam has said, because we moved to a scenario where we allowed and created this environment of having our employees vote. But there were hundreds of things. Everybody wanted everything and anything, and you can't please all of the people all the time. So in helping us to kind of create that short list, to align it, we looked at our strategy, our purpose, what were we primarily involved in, where did we have a footprint? And we said, okay, if that is it, then who are the organizations that fit in that field? So for us, food and giving and hunger was just absolutely aligned. And then we looked at companies and organizations, charities, who were in that field. And then we created a shortlist. We went out and made sure they met the criteria. Were they going to be able to be, or an organization that were available all over Ireland? We were concerned about costs that they attributed, so they had to meet a certain amount of criteria. And when we'd done all of that clearing, we had perhaps about 4, and we put those 4 up, and then we went out to a vote to our employees. So for me, from a point of view of being a CEO, that made that incredibly easy. The vision was very clear. I could talk to it. I really felt it was purposeful, and it resonated and was authentic for our teams. And the feedback was excellent on that as well. So that was my perspective.
Brilliant. Thanks, Margot. Liam, was a similar journey?
Yeah, I mean, as I explained earlier, I think it certainly was a very, very similar journey, and for all the same reasons as Margot outlined as well, in terms of the number of requests that we would have received, like I say, from both organizations and employees. And I think from a corporate perspective, as a local subsidiary, of course, we're subject to governance and numbers of different rules from a corporate perspective. And we at a local level have to understand how best to tap into that corporate pot, so to speak. And when when you're talking about matters of governance and about transparency and trust, and then tapping into global pots, partnerships are key, and that's where CFI plays a huge role in that as well, in helping guide us along that, especially from a compliance perspective. So it is definitely, I mean, there's no going away from aligning with your corporate strategy, aligning with your CSR strategy, and having a partnership which really helps that whole global process, I guess, fit into place.
And Liam, just a follow-up question that's come through. How do you distinguish or decide between global and local giving?
Global, well, I mean, okay, I am chair of the EMEA CSR Governance Committee, and the process that we have there is we open up to all the countries in EMEA to put forward proposals for projects, and they're decided upon then. And in the different countries, some actually partner with organizations, some don't. But in terms of global versus local, what I would say is that we're issued with budgets every year from a local perspective, and then we try and tap into a global one. So I don't know. I know that's very SAP specific, but it goes back to what can you do as an organization? How can you tap into both the global CSR policies and also benefit local organizations using both? So I don't know if that really answers the questions, but there is a difference, all right, within SAP in terms of global and local. Yes.
Great, thanks. Peter, you really articulated the journey from specific areas then to a much more structured and strategic approach. What were the kind of contributing factors to, I suppose, unpacking that vision or?
I suppose, Denise, I think we, as I said in my prepared remarks, was that, getting started is a key part of it. I think there's a risk that you overthink these things, and, you overcomplicate, visions, and, you learn a lot as you go along. And I think, ultimately, I think we've ended up in a good place, and we need to continue to improve it and develop it, but we've ended up in a good place because we've learned and adapted and changed. So, certainly our experience has been, getting going is really important. And the other thing I'd say is that, it's, which I talked about as well, was that it needs to be driven by, it can't be a top-down process in an organization, because one of the key benefits of this as an organization is the impact it has on people and how they feel about the organization they work in. And so, staff having ownership is really important. So this is not a CEO pet project. It's not what I think a CEO is the right thing to do, or, it's very, I mean, I have a voice, but it's only one voice. And so that's really, really important in terms of setting a strategy in business, one that people feel ownership of. And the final thing I think is really important in terms of your strategy and unpacking that journey is when something works, is to tell people about it and communicate to your colleagues and to your stakeholders what's done and what has worked. And because then it makes it feel real and tangible to people. And as I said, I think the things that have really worked in our business are the ones where things like Laura Lynn, where people can go and see the work that we've helped to do, and it makes it real. BYC, we can go up and see the impact it makes in the kids' lives. When we travel to Malawi, those type of things, that makes a real difference. So, it can't be abstract, it has to be real. To comment briefly about the global versus local, which is one of the big challenges we face, because, we're obviously an Irish-based business, but we've, over 100 customers all over the world. We've staff based in 30, probably about 14 locations around the world. And you want to be relevant to what your customers and to your staff around the world, but you also want, you can't spread it too thin. So you've got to try and strike a balance. And that's why we've done things, a kind of a flagship project in Ireland like BYC, but we've also focused on things like our COVID response fund around the world, and the projects in Malawi, for example, and we've done other things globally as well. So it's really a mix. You've got to try and find strike a good balance, because, but again, it's going to be driven by your business. We're a very global business, but we're obviously we're very centered here in Ireland in terms of our operations. So you got to try and strike the balance between the two.
Great, thank you very much. I'm conscious of time. We're coming towards the end. I want to say a huge thank you to all our speakers for the work that you're doing, for your time this morning, and for sharing for all your incredible insights and partnerships. A final comment from each one of you. Margot.
Yeah, just unmuting. I think I always think of you know, that comment, it's the Gandhi one, be the change you want to see. You know, you can't depend on others to do it. You have to be part of it. And if you believe that this is going to make a community change, then you've got to drive it. We can't stand back.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Liam.
Make the best of what you have. If your strengths lie in digital skills, then push digital skills. Your strengths lie in other areas, then push it. But just make a decision, analyze your own strengths and use them.
Great, thank you. Peter, final word of wisdom.
Final word. Look, I think we have, as corporates, we have a responsibility as corporate citizens to do things, and we just need to get on and do it. And the thing I would say is start, because it does make a real difference. There are huge benefits. And, you know, encourage others, which is, I think, going to the point about the, you know, there's a lot more that the corporate world can do. And I think it's up to us who are involved in this to try to spread the word and be advocates for it. And I'd certainly, that's really important, I think, for all of us to do that.
Well, thank you all for being fantastic advocates this morning. There's lots of complimentary comments coming in on the chat around all your presentations. So thank you to you all. Thanks to the CFI team for coordinating us, and thank you very much for all of you who came this morning and gave up your time.
A pleasure. Thanks, Denise.
Pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.